When you think of Amazon, two things probably pop into your head: speed and precision. You click a button, and like magic, a package just shows up. It's this incredible promise of a global inventory at your fingertips. But what happens when the system that makes it all work gets it completely wrong? Let's get into it.
Okay, so picture this. It's an action we've all done probably 1,000 times. You find that perfect thing, the price is right, and best of all, it's in stock. You hit buy now, and the screen confidently tells you arriving tomorrow. You trust it. Of course you do.
But here's the crazy part. For a ton of people, that product they just bought, well, it wasn't actually there. It was a ghost in the machine, a phantom listing in a database that had somehow lost its grip on what was real.
Now, this wasn't just some random isolated glitch. No, this was a huge systemic issue, something that insiders started calling the phantom problem. And the consequences? They were very, very real.
And the fallout from this? Oh, it was massive. We're talking about way more than just an inconvenience. It led to mass order cancellations, which, as you can imagine, made customers furious. Third-party sellers were getting hit with penalties for not shipping products they never even had. And internally, audits were showing that different parts of the company had completely different ideas about what was actually sitting on the warehouse shelves. So the big question is, how on earth does the world's most sophisticated logistics company end up selling stuff it doesn't even have? Well, the answer isn't a simple bug. The truth is, the entire system was slowly but surely drifting apart. And this leads us to the core technical villain of our story, something called database drift. Okay, imagine you have two notebooks, and they're supposed to be perfect copies of each other. But over time, you make a little change in one and forget to update the other. Then another change. Pretty soon you have two totally different versions of the truth. Now just scale that problem up to millions of products and hundreds of databases all over the world. And here's the thing that's really key to understand. It wasn't just about the sheer size of Amazon. It was about how spread out everything was. Every single fulfillment center, every third-party seller's system, every pricing engine, they were all separate pieces of this giant puzzle. They were all supposed to be perfectly in sync, but tiny little delays, these microsecond inconsistencies, meant the whole platform was slowly shattering into fragments. To really get why this happened, we've got to take a step back and look at the history here. This whole problem has deep roots in the way retail has tried to manage inventory, and how the technology for it has evolved, or in some ways struggled to keep up. So let's track how we got here. It started out super simple, with what are called batch updates. Think of a shopkeeper, at the end of the day, literally counting all the cans on a shelf and updating a master list overnight. Simple, right? Then we got real-time APIs, which allowed for instant updates, a huge leap forward. But Amazon? Amazon operates at what's called a distributed scale, a level of mind-boggling complexity where having one single central list is basically impossible to maintain. And this is where it gets kind of ironic, right? Amazon's own incredible growth, its wild success, was the very thing that was pushing its technology past the breaking point. The massive scale that made it a powerhouse also made keeping a single consistent version of reality an incredibly difficult, constantly moving target. So this whole mess forced Amazon to take a really hard look in the mirror at the true cost of their data being wrong. And what they learned revealed some fundamental truths about how to run a business in this digital age. The first big lesson was technical, sure, but it had these massive business implications. When your data lives in hundreds of different places at once, in a distributed database, you just can't rely on one central source of truth anymore. It doesn't work. You need a totally new system, a distributed truth, that can constantly verify and reconcile information across all those different points. And that quote, man, that really cuts to the core of the issue. A little delay in data syncing, that's not just a customer service headache. It's a fundamental systemic risk to the entire business. It can undermine your pricing, your logistics, your reputation, everything. Because at the end of the day, it all boils down to one simple thing: trust. The trust that you and I place in that Buy Now button is directly connected to how truthful the database behind it is. And when that data is wrong, that trust just vanishes. So what did they do? Well, they had to completely rethink their approach. The new goal wasn't just to fix the sync issues. It was to build entirely new systems that could actually measure how reliable the data was at any given moment. To create a kind of reality confidence score that would signal the true health of their inventory system. This whole saga with Amazon's ghost products, it's a wild story.
But it leaves us with a really powerful question that applies to pretty much any modern company. Their problem was a symptom of a database that was drifting away from reality. It really makes you wonder, in a world that is so completely built on data, what happens when that data, even for a split second, just lies?